Beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all you know on earth and all you need to know. These are some of the most quoted lines from English literature, and these lines are written by John Keats in his Ode on a Grecian Urn. Yes, you have guessed it right. In this video today, I will talk about John Keats' great ode, Ode on a Grecian Urn. Along with that, I will discuss previous year's UGC NET questions on the poem Ode on a Grecian Urn. So do stay tuned and watch the video till the end. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, then do subscribe to it, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so that whenever I post a new video, you are the first one to get notified. So let's get started. But before we move ahead, let's look at some of the literary trivias. The poem Ode on a Grecian Urn was written in the spring of 1819 by English romantic poet John Keats. John Keats was one of the second generation romantic poets along with Lord Byron and Percy, Bysshe, Shelley. So you have to know who are the first generation romantic poets. The first generation of romantic poets were William Blake, William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. The poem was first published in Annals of Fine Arts in the year 1819. Though it is considered as one of the great odes in English literature today, yet when it was published for the first time, it was never well received by the critics. In fact, Keats never received his due as a poet during his lifetime. As the name suggests, this particular ode praises an urn. To be precise, a Grecian urn. In ancient Greece, urns were used to hold the ashes of the dead. But here in this particular ode, Keats does not describe a specific urn. Still, if we talk about Keats' inspiration behind writing this poem, we will see that in 1817, Keats' friend and artist Benjamin Haydon had taken him to see the Elgin marbles in the British Museum. These classical Greek marble sculptures were admired for their beauty and perfection, and Keats was inspired to write this poem after this visit. As we will see as we move ahead in the poem, here in this ode, Keats talks about the eternal or timeless beauty and perfection of art. It is one of the great odes of 1819, which include Keats' four other odes like Ode to a Nightingale, Ode on Melancholy, Ode on Indolence and Ode to Psyche. Now let's look at the opening lines of the poem. The poem opens with these particular lines. Thou still unravished bride of quietness, thou foster child of silence and slow time. In December 2018 UGC NET examination, there was this matching type question where they asked to match the poem with the opening line. So you must know the opening line of this poem, and not just the opening line, you have to know the poem itself if you want to answer these kinds of matching questions. And there is no shortcut to it, you just have to read the poem a couple of times. So do read the poem. Now coming to the opening line of the poem, the opening lines establishes the poem as a work of ekphrasis. Now what is ekphrasis? Ekphrasis means that it is written about a visual work of art. In these first lines, the speaker is looking at the urn and is directly addressing and personifying the urn. Now again, personification, you have to know what it is. So personification is a figure of speech in which an object or a non-human thing is given human qualities. Here, in the very first lines of the poem, the speaker is personifying the urn as the bride of quietness, foster child of silence and slow time. Now, one interpretation of it could be that this urn is a work of stone and it is made by an artist. So as a work of art, time doesn't have any effect on it. Hence, aging and death do not hold true for it. It is an eternal work of art. Hence, it is addressed as the foster child of silence and slow time. Time is moving very slow for this work of art, and it is a foster child of silence because it doesn't answer your queries. Then he personifies the urn as a sylvan historian. that can tell a story even better than a poem written in words. Now these terms that I am mentioning, Sylvan Historian, then Foster Child of Silence, and Slow Time, and Bride of Quietness, these terms Keats uses in this poem, and you have to remember these terms, because in objective type examinations, examiners try to find out if you know about these terms and if you know which poem mentions these terms. So you have to read the poem a couple of times, as I already mentioned. So by now the speaker is totally preoccupied with the depiction of pictures on the urn that are frozen in time. First, he looks at a picture in stanza 1, which is full of frenzied action, where a group of men pursues a group of women. The male figures are playing musical instruments and are pursuing the female characters. The speaker wonders what stories are being told by the images on the urn, whether these figures are of human beings or gods, and who are those reluctant looking women, which part of Greece they are from, though the scenes portray a kind of chase and an attempt to escape. But then these questions are never answered, and it is open for interpretation from art and poetry lovers throughout the world. Coming to the second stanza, the speaker looks at another picture on the urn, in which a young man is playing a pipe. Now, pipe is a musical instrument. A piper is sitting with his lover beneath some trees. Now, this piper in the picture can never stop playing his pipe, as he is frozen on the urn, and as the trees in the picture will never shed their leaves, because the trees and the lovers all are frozen in time. Then the speaker says, heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Therefore, ye soft pipes play on. It can be interpreted as that the pipes as unheard melodies are sweeter than the hard melodies of this mortal world, because they are never affected by time. Music that can only be imagined is better than the music that can be heard in reality. This idea that there is another world, in fact a better world that can be perceived through imagination, is a typical Keatsian idea, and Keats plays with this idea throughout his poetry, and more so in this poem, Ode on a Grecian Urn. But there is more to it than just this. The speaker then looks at a scene depicting two young lovers in which they are nearly kissing. However, their lips can never meet. The speaker tells them not to grieve about it, as they will always love each other and the woman will always remain beautiful, unaffected by time and age. As you can see here, Keats is trying to project the world of imagination against the world of reality, and the world of imagination is better as it is unaffected by time and mortality. In the third stanza, Keats uses the word happy 6 times, and this is something very interesting. First, the speaker looks at the images of the trees surrounding the lovers and calls their boughs happy, as they will never shed their leaves and they will never bid goodbye to the season spring. He is happy for the piper because his music will be forever new. Then he is happy that the lovers will love each other till eternity, unlike mortal lovers that eventually vanishes and it causes heartache. However, the tone changes in the last 2 lines of the third stanza, and the excessive happiness leaves the heart sorrowful, just as the word cloyed in the third stanza means a discomfort that comes from excessive happiness or excessive sweetness. Here we need to talk a little bit about Keats's own life. He had a very miserable and unhappy life. He lost his parents very young. His brother died due to tuberculosis, whom Keats was nursing. Keats himself was suffering from tuberculosis. His guardian kept his inheritance, and because of that he couldn't marry the woman he loved. Keats left his medical career midway to be a poet, but then critics never gave his due as a poet during his lifetime. So it's very natural that Keats saw some kind of a respite, some kind of a relief from the sorrows of the world by entering into the world of imagination. However, Keats can understand that even that world of imagination has its pain and suffering. He makes it clear that there can be no happiness without sadness, no joy without grief and pain. And Keats develops this idea in the third stanza of Ode on a Grecian Urn, where these immortal lovers are experiencing a paradoxical situation of life and death, reality and imagination. In fact, we will see more of it as we move to the fourth stanza. Now coming to the fourth stanza, the speaker looks at another scene depicting a ceremonial progression where a mysterious priest leads a heifer or a virgin cow to be sacrificed. Keats asks the priest, "To what altar are you leading the heifer?" This means that the altar is not a part of the picture on the urn. As you can see, Keats is now imagining outside these scenes on the urn, which means that he is now looking outside the world of art. Here, reality is being pitted against art and imagination. Now coming back to the poem, there is a little town from where a group of villagers are going to the sacrifice. Here, Keats imagines that the little town, is it by a sea, is it by a river, or is it by the mountains? He doesn't know. In fact, there is no way for anybody to know the real answer, because the urn is a work of art, and Keats says that it is. Keats already said in the first stanza that it is a foster child of silence. So it doesn't answer our queries, our questions. So one can only imagine about the pictures frozen on the urn. So Keats again imagines the little town which is devoid of its people and says that its streets will forever be silent because the villagers have deserted it and will never return as they are frozen on the urn. Like everything depicted on the urn, it can never change and it is not a source of happiness. Keats realizes that the world of art, the world of imagination also has its limitations. Along with the lovers on the urn who are forever young and in love, there is this heifer decorated with flowers, and it was in fact going to be slaughtered. Keats was gradually losing himself up in the world of the urn, the world of art and imagination. Perhaps he was looking for an escape from the miseries of the real world, actual world. But all too soon he realizes that the world of imagination is also not a forever happy world. It has its own suffering and limitations. In the fifth stanza, Keats uses alliteration. Now, what is alliteration? It is another figure of speech apart from personification that we came across in the first stanza of the poem. So these are very important points to remember for objective type questions in examinations like UGC NET, SET or PGT or any examinations of English literature. So I hope all you know what is alliteration, and if you don't know, you have to remember that alliteration means the repetition of the same consonant sound at the beginning of two or more lines. Now look at the use of alliteration in the fifth stanza by Keats. Of marble, men and maidens overwrought. Here the consonant sound ma is repeated in this line. Now coming to the analysis of the fifth and final stanza, the speaker addresses the urn again and says that it does offer a temporary respite from thought, but then this apparent respite seems false or unreal. Hence, Keats calls the urn cold. Stretching this idea of reality versus imagination or art, Keats says that when everyone from his generation will die, the urn will still be there, imparting this mysterious knowledge that beauty and truth are one and the same thing. This is the fact that anybody should know and understand. Keats, through this poem, tries to foreground the idea of interdependence of art, beauty and truth. At the same time, this relationship between art, beauty and truth is mysterious and cannot be defined or perceived through human logic or reasoning. Remember Keats's idea of negative capability, where he talks about the capacity of great writers like Shakespeare to pursue artistic beauty without the use of facts or logical reasoning. So Keats develops this idea of negative capability in this poem, Ode on a Grecian Urn. And this is another important point that you must remember for your examinations. It can be any examination, be it objective or subjective for English literature. So the poem takes on this rather philosophically paradoxical idea in which beauty is something to be aspired by human beings, and at the same time it is an abstract idea that lies out of human reach, out of human logic. Of course, the poem is forever open for interpretation, and that is the reason this poem is so much loved by generations of readers or generations of poetry lovers all over the world. So that was the analysis of the poem. Now let's look at some of the previous year's questions on the poem. So in November 2017, there was this UGC NET question where they asked to match the phrase with the poem, and the phrase was green altar that we came across in the poem Ode on a Grecian Urn. So green altar will be matched with the poem Ode on a Grecian Urn. Then in September 2013 UGC NET, there was this question where they asked, in Keats's Ode on a Grecian Urn, the key ideas are best described as the following except one. So which one was not described by Keats in the poem Ode on a Grecian Urn? That's what they asked. So the options are A, movement versus status. Option B, disappointing love versus eternal bliss. Option C, scars of history versus consolations of art. And option D, beauty versus truth. So Keats mentioned about movement versus status. Keats movement means the movement in actual real world, and stasis in the world of art which remains unchanged. So stasis means something which does not move, which is unchanged. So that is the world of art or imagination that Keats talked about in the poem. Then coming to the second point, disappointing love, that we come across most of the time in actual real world, versus eternal bliss that we get to know in the world of art and imagination that Keats already talked about in the ode. Now coming to the third point, scars of history versus consolations of art. So this is something that Keats didn't mention in this poem. So the answer will be the third one, because Keats also talked about the fourth point, beauty versus truth, in detail. So the third one is the option which Keats did not mention in this poem. So the correct answer will be C. So that was all for this video. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something new, and in the next video I will see you soon. So till then, take care and bye bye.